In this video, we'll be discussing the changes to WoW's two major faction hubs throughout the history of the game. This will be a very broad overview, since there are a ton of very small details from each expansion that can be added, such as which random NPCs were added and removed. With WoW's 9th expansion Dragonflight on the horizon, we'd figured now would be a good time to look back over the changes that both Stormwind and Orgrimmar have undergone over the years. Starting off with classic WoW. Following the Second War, the Stonemasons Guild, led by Edwin Van Cleef, rebuilt much of Stormwind as it stands today. However, due to King Varian's wife's death at the machinations of the evil Black Dragon Onyxia disguised as Lady Katrina Prestor, the Stonemasons Guild eventually grew disgruntled with Stormwind and formed the Defies Brotherhood. A notable change occurs in the faction capitals when players raid Onyxia's lair or Blackwing lair. Upon the death of one of the children of Deathwing, Onyxia's head or Neferent's head will drop, which starts a quest. After completing the quest, the respective dragon's head will be displayed in a large spike in the central Orgrimmar area, or will be hung from the front gates of Stormwind area for a long period of time, while also giving a buff to all players and NPCs in the major city. The pre-patch event for the Burning Crusade expansion saw Burning Legion forces under High Lord Gruul attack Orgrimmar and Stormwind, with players fighting the demons off before assaulting the Dark Portal. And this is about it, except a bunch of NPC workers and piles of explosives added to one of the canals, leading to the Stormwind Harbor, supposedly already built. However, for some reason, the only thing stopping us from going there is a giant wall. Well, okay then. Anyways, this theme of actually putting NPCs building stuff ahead of it being added is a common thing Blizzard with Orgrimmar and especially Stormwind. WoW's next expansion, the Wrath of the Lich King, allowed players to help repel the Second Scourge invasion. This blight turned the living into the dead, including players, and resulted in massive sieges upon the major cities themselves, which usually led to them being completely overran rather quickly. For transportation and logistical reasons for the war against Arthas, several portals and means of transport to Northrend were added to both Orgrimmar and Stormwind. In Orgrimmar, the Zeppelin Tower to Grommash Hold and the Boran Tundra was built. The Stormwind Harbor was added to the game with the boat in Valiant's Keep and Boran Tundra, and finally with the docks added to Stormwind, Draenei Night Elves no longer needed to run all the way through wetlands, as the boat was added from Darnassus to this new port. Bolvar led the Alliance Assault on Icecrown, and as such, he departed Stormwind at the beginning of Wrath, thankfully replaced with the now returned King Varian Wrynn, who up to this point had been missing, leaving Anduin Wrynn in charge, with Onyxia revealed and kicked out of the city. Wrath also saw the introduction of player Death Knights arriving in Orgrimmar and Stormwind, with much commotion and unease from citizens. Various NPCs are rude and aggressive to DKs when they first arrive in the city from the DK starting zone. Orgrimmar also received a unique arena called the Ring of Valor, originally just a giant unique but useless arena that you could look down on but couldn't even enter. But they did at least reuse the building with the Ring of Valor, which was a unique arena with the rising and lowering platforms with flaming walls. However, this arena was removed from the game in Mist of Pandaria because of its wacky nature, although it had been nerfed and temporarily removed before again and again prior to Mist of Pandaria. For the Cataclysm's launch, both capital cities were completely revamped and updated. The Throne of the Elements was added to the northern plateau of Orgrimmar, and the eastern Earth Shrine in the middle of the lake in the northeast corner of Stormwind. This has 6 portals to the Cataclysm zones: Mount Hyjal, Twilight Highlands, Vashj'ir, Deepholm, and Uldum. A portal to Tol Barad is also located nearby in both cities. After Deathwing's defeat, a large part of his corrupted scales from his back can be seen hanging from chains in the back of the city. The massive scales from Deathwing presumably came off the infamous Spine of Deathwing fight, and can be located behind the Cataclysm Ring of Portals in both of the cities. Players who can wield his staff can acquire the legendary staff Dragonwrath Terragos's Rest. This long questline is associated with the Firelands raid that took many weeks and a lot of skill and dedication. At the end of the questline, the blue Dragonflight would spawn in either Orgrimmar or Stormwind. This massive event plays much like the end of the Old War event in Northrend Dalaran, where Ronan shouts his most famous line. The city is phased for roughly half an hour with a massive speech, and a player who obtained the staff can be seen resting on the back of Terragos's spirit with the blue dragons in the air and magic runes in the sky. Unlike Stormwind, Orgrimmar seemed to escape most of Deathwing's ire, with the only casualties being some Zeppelins in the Cata trailer. Garrosh made major changes to Orgrimmar shortly before the Cataclysm expansion, expanding it in size and adding to it various districts, while completely overhauling the layout of each district, and their general shapes. For Torrens in the Valley of Wisdom, the area that used to be the throne room was replaced with various Torrent structures. Trolls in the Valley of Spirits were expanded but moved north, closer to the exit, further from the city center, which was probably a hint at Garrosh's hatred for them, and goblins in the Goblin Slums where the trolls once resided. And the Valley of Honor, once small and rather unused, was massively expanded with a huge back entrance that led to Ajara. The entire city was updated with new inns, auction houses, and homes. The Flightmaster and Zeppelins were moved to the central plateau of the city, and Grommash Hold was built overlooking the center of the city. When Deathwing descended upon Orgrimmar City after his violent exit from Deepholm, he caused extensive damage to Stormwind. The entirety of Stormwind Park was destroyed, leaving nothing but a crater behind. However, this was not the only damage. The clock tower among the structures was covered with char marks from Deathwing's approach, while the gate to Stormwind itself had massive claw marks melted into the stone, even being the login screen itself, which was a visual of Deathwing sitting on the gate itself. Denath's monument was toppled into the moat as well, with only the feet remaining standing on its pedestal. The Stormwind City outskirts was added, comprising the earthen earth shrines and the field of the northeast part of Stormwind. A massive graveyard was also added, one that contains various tombs and graves, one obviously to Tivin, while some are left more mysterious, one even theorized to be Arthas. Stormwind Keep itself was also updated, finally having an actual throne room, moving the PvP stuff as well as PvE vendors to a new section of the Old Town, finally replacing the god-awful PvP area originally set there. There were even different stone paths made for each district. All of these updates had been sorely needed for both of the cities, since beforehand they were horribly aged facades of 2D walls and massive world holes. Cataclysm introduced Azeroth Flying, which was one of the primary reasons the zones had to be redone. WoW's fourth expansion, Mist of Pandaria, saw a handful of changes to Stormwind and massive changes to Orgrimmar. Unsurprisingly, portals to the Vale of Eternal Blossoms were added in each capital. Mist of Pandaria was a very lore-heavy expansion, but we'll try to keep the major character actions short. Jaina appears briefly in Stormwind following the destruction of Theramore, but leaves after the Alliance refuses to seek immediate retribution for Theramore. In the events of Mist of Pandaria, Anduin goes missing for a bit while he's presumably lost in Pandaria. This is reflected by his absence in Stormwind Keep, and the start of Varian's search for him sees an Alliance gunship looming in the northeast corner of Stormwind, where it is ready to take players to Pandaria. Further updates to Stormwind and Mist of Pandaria included the Stormwind entrance towers and the clock tower being restored in 5.2. Additionally, Denath's statue was returned to its former splendor, alongside most of the other superficial damages that Deathwing caused in the Valley of Heroes. The Siege of Orgrimmar shows even more of what Garrosh had been building since before Cataclysm, with enormous underground facilities and rooms. The second half of the raid takes place entirely in front of the city and its outskirts. Garrosh had built up Orgrimmar's defenses, and players had to forge their way through his true horde. We could spend a whole video talking about all the changes in places under Orgrimmar that this raid added, but the actual changes to a capital is one of the reasons this raid is so fondly remembered. This expansion had also recruited the Pandaren, and pandas had joined the faction capitals with their riding turtles and hot air balloons. In Orgrimmar, the Hojin Pandan, led by G Firepaw, make their camp in the north valley of the city. And in Stormwind, the Tushui Pandaren, led by Asa Cloudsinger, established a camp near the eastern Earth Shrine overlooking the waterfall. Lastly, the Brawlers Guild was also added, an arena that lets players fight various foes from the past, and many joke characters and encounters that wouldn't fit in a raid or a dungeon. These were added to the underside of the Deep Ran Tram in the Alliance side, and for the Horde it was added where the Ring of Valor stood, once and for all removing it from the game. The Warlords of Draenor expansion saw very few changes to Orgrimmar and Stormwind. Of course, portals to Ashran were added to both cities for players' conveniences and in-game logistics. In Stormwind, a small Kirin-Tor encampment with a portal added on a plateau overlooking the Mage Quarter was added, which can be seen at the end of the Everbloom dungeon. WoW's 6th expansion, Legion, began with the armies of Azeroth amassing and preparing for an assault on the Broken Shore. Both Orgrimmar and Stormwind harbors were full of NPCs and teeming with activity. The Legion starting quest has the players go through the harbor and interact with some of these NPCs. This remains to date one of the most impressive things Blizzard has ever done in sheer scope and build-up for an endgame event. Blizzard also added a new portal to the Broken Isles version of Dalaran to both cities. The major character events in Orgrimmar and Stormwind during Legion included Vol'jin dying after the failed Broken Shore assault, and Sylvanas Windrunner replacing him as Warchief. King Varian Wrynn dies at the Broken Shore, and Anduin takes his place as king. A memorial to Varian is built in finally a rebuilt Stormwind Park, and it is renamed to Lion's Rest. Finally, Illyria and Turalyon returned to Stormwind after the end of Legion. Legion also saw the introduction of allied races to the game. NPCs were built in both Orgrimmar and Stormwind to accommodate these new factions. The Orgrimmar embassy was added to the southwest corner of Orgrimmar, replacing the Goblin Slums, and the Stormwind embassy was added to the Stormwind city outskirts, in the north-central part of the city. The Horde welcomed two new allied races, the Nightborn led by Thorystra, and the High Mountain Tauren led by Myla. The Alliance gained two new allied races, the Void Elves led by Magister Umbric, and the Lightforged Draenei from Argus. Battle for Azeroth included a great many deal of changes to both Orgrimmar and Stormwind, the most notable of these changes being the addition of the portal rooms. There were so many portals throughout the cities from past expansions and patches that were somewhat haphazardly placed. It was high time Blizzard consolidated some. Although they didn't move all the portals and remove some entirely, it was still a major change and a great quality of life update. Officially, the Orgrimmar portal room is called Pathfinder's Den, and the Stormwind portal room is named the Wizard's Sanctum. Various NPCs can be seen running through the portal rooms. Among these NPCs, there are the Axadar Adventurers, Outland Adventurers, Northrend Adventurers, Broken Isle Adventurers, Kulturan Adventurers, and Shadowland Adventurers. Warboards were also added to both cities, which are now ubiquitous in the game and were another great quality of life update. Following the Siege of Lordaeron, Orgrimmar is now full of undead refugees following the destruction of Undercity. The Zeppelin that used to travel to the towers outside of Undercity has been replaced by a portal. The Horde welcomed 3 new allied races to the Orgrimmar embassy: the Volpera, the Maghar Orcs, and the Zandalari Trolls, led by Queen Talanji. These new races and NPCs can be seen throughout the city. By the end of BFA, the Horde had been seriously shaken up. Sylvanas had fled, Sourfang had died, and Gallywix had gone AWOL. In response to the wake of the 2 bad war chiefs, the Horde Council was established, with Gazlo now leading the Bilgewater Cartel, and Kalia Menethil and Lillian Voss now leading the Forsaken. We'll briefly go into more details about the Orgrimmar Portal Room. The portal room consists of 2 levels and was added in patch 8.1.5. Many of the portals that were moved or deleted were formerly located in the Cleft of Shadow, located underneath Orgrimmar. The first level of Orgrimmar portal room consisted of 7 portals encaved in almost perfect circle. However, only 6 of them are used. Down 3 flights of stairs in the basement level, an exact copy of the previous level and layout, but with only 3 portals active out of the 7 available spaces. Every portal has 2 casters holding it open, and there are some interesting choices Blizzard has made as to who is casting them. This Silvermoon portal is created by 2 Blood Elf Silvermoon Magisters. In Shadowlands, the Ouroboros portal was added and is held up by Ebonblade Alkalites. The portal to Azuna is held open by 2 Nightborn Shal'Darai Arcanists. The portal to Zuldazar is held open by 2 Zandalari Troll Arcanitals. The portal to the Jade Forest is held open by 2 Pandoran Haujun Magisters. The portal to Northrend Dalaran is held open by 2 Undead Argent Mages. The portal to Shatrath is held open by 2 Ethereal Consortium Arcanists. The portal to the Caverns of Time is held open by 2 Bronze Chronomancers, presumably 2 Bronze Dragons in the form of Blood Elves. And the portal to Warspear is held open by 2 Maghar Orc Priests. The Cavern of Time portal was added in 8.2, and the other 2 portals were moved down from the floor above. In Stormwind, a boat was added to Borealis from the harbor. The boat to Darnassus was replaced by a portal following the burning of Teldrassil, and Worgen and Night Elf refugees are now present in Stormwind with their old home being destroyed. A lot of lore events take place in Stormwind throughout BFA, but Talanji being rescued from the Stormwind Stockades by a Horde champion sets off a lot of the events of BFA. Right after this, Jaina sets off for Kul Tiras to face her past and secure a navy. Additionally, while not seen in the game, but rather cinematic, Saurfang is imprisoned in the Stormwind Stockades until Anduin releases him. The Stormwind Harbor can also be seen full of dead soldiers in the cinematic. During and after the events of the Fourth War, the Alliance gained 3 new allied races: the Kulturan humans, the Dark Iron Dwarves, and the Mechanomes. The Stormwind Portal Room, like its Horde counterpart, has so much detail that can't be described in this video, but we'll try to keep it short. The Stormwind Portal Room is a much more grand, spacious, and accommodating than its Orgrimmar counterpart. It features an entrance hall and a much easier linear layout with 10 portal slots and a set of 2 wings with a large stained glass window and a future set of stairs in the center of the long room. The portal room is guarded by several summoned water elementals and arcane golems. Upon entering the portal room, ascending the Mage Tower in the Mage Quarter in Stormwind, to the right in a clockwise faction are portals to Stormshield, powered by 2 Kirin Tor mages. After that, there's a portal to Borealis at the far left end of the wing, held up by 2 Kulturan human Stormwake Tide Sages. In Shadowlands, the Ouroboros portal was added and is held open by 2 Ebonblade Alkalite human Death Knights. And the 5th and final portal of the left leads to Azuna, and is held open by 2 Night Elf Narthalas Ghost Mages. In the right wing, once again clockwise from the entrance, are the portals to the Northrend Dalaran, powered by 2 Silver Covenant Mages. To the right of the portal is a portal to the Exodar, powered by 2 Draenei Portal Keepers. A portal to the Caverns of Time at the far end of the right wing, held open by 2 Bronze Chronomancers. Next, a portal to Shatrath that is held open by 2 Ethereal Consortium Arcanists. And finally, a portal to the Jade Forest held open by the Pandoran Tushui Magisters. There were a few interesting notes about these NPCs in the portal rooms, which is why they're listed here. There were only 2 NPCs of the same faction from the open portals in both Orgrimmar and Stormwind, which are the Ethereals and the Bronze Dragons. Curiously, all of the NPCs which are opening the portals can be played by characters, with the only exceptions being the Ethereals, the Ghosts, and the Bronze Dragons. Perhaps these are hinting at future races which might be added to the game. Although, fun fact, during the beta of Shadowlands, brokers held the portal to Ouroboros open. However, during the beta they were removed and replaced with the Ebon Blade. Shadowlands saw a few changes to Orgrimmar and Stormwind. During Death Rising, the pre-patch event, Anduin was abducted by Mossworn from Stormwind and Turalyon now rules in his absence. Chromie time was also implemented, and the Bronze Dragon Chromie can now be found near the NPCs in both cities. The new leveling system can be activated by talking to her on top of her hourglass. Finally, new character introduction buildings were added in Shadowlands with a level switch. These buildings originally were used by various random vendors, but are now replaced by buildings simply called training halls, and are full of class trainers that players ascend to after finishing Exile's Reach, the new island starting zone. A portal to Oribos was added in both cities' portal rooms, and finally in 9.1.5, weather effects were added to capital cities, including rain and thunder, which really are a wonder to see when they happen. There is also a new little structure in 9.2.5 PTR, which looks like a stable with various workers preparing the location. Maybe a stable for our new customizable Dragonflight mounts? It even includes a short questline where you stop lazy workers and thieves by throwing pies at them. Stormwind is beside the stockades, and Orgrimmar's is sitting in the Valley of Strength where the guild vendor used to be. It now moved to the outer edge, with even more changes seemingly on the way for the new expansion Dragonflight, like a possible update to both cities' docks. But we will have to see when the future comes in Dragonflight.